Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra Michael, founder of Heal Anxious Attachment, the Hub. I'm excited to introduce Madeline Charles. Madeline cracked the code on lasting love and is now sharing it with women ready to transform their dating lives. As a licensed psychotherapist and creator of the Attraction Blueprint, she blends practical tools with soulful guidance to help women attract secure, fulfilling relationships. Madeline turned her love story into reality, creating a deeply connected life with her husband, Sean, in the mountains of Colorado. She's here to show you how to do the same because the love you desire isn't just possible, it's waiting for you. Welcome, Madeline. How are you doing?
Hey, Cassandra, I am so pumped to be here today. It's truly an honor. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, today we're going to be speaking about how to shift from anxious patterns to irresistible confidence in love. So, when you say irresistible confidence, what does that actually look like in relationships and what does it not look like?
Yeah, I love that question because, my whole brand is called the Irresistible Woman and Irresistible Confidence. It can sound like this nice kind of catchphrase, but it's like, how do I actually apply that, Madeline? What does that mean? And so when I speak about irresistible confidence, I'm really talking about uncircumstantial personal power. So this is where you learn how to feel whole and worthy from the inside out, regardless of external validation, which is a tough thing. Like it's something that I work on every single day. And I like to remind women that it's not a destination and it's not a box you check where you're like, cool, I'm worthy and whole. And like, that's that. It's a choice that you step into every day and kind of recommit to moment by moment in those situations and moments that stretch you, that test you, that maybe want to bring up an old pattern or an old story, you really learn how to remind yourself, wait a minute, I'm choosing to be worthy and whole. And so, yeah, it's a process. And what that looks like in dating specifically is really letting yourself be seen, all sides of yourself. So, when we don't have irresistible confidence, we might be prone to over functioning, trying to kind of get controlling or grippy with our energy, or we have this kind of armor and we feel kind of guarded and a little bit aloof and cold, and it's hard for someone to really connect with us and kind of get underneath that. And so, with that irresistible confidence, deciding I'm worthy and whole no matter what's happening around me, I don't need that external validation, it radiates out this ease and this comfortability that people feel. They feel safe around you because subconsciously there's no energetic, like funky thing that happens where it's like, hey, I'm kind of testing you, or hey, I'm contorting myself in hopes of getting to that next date or trying to play it cool so that I don't come on too needy or whatever those kinds of old things are that we can fall into. So that's how it can kind of look in dating. And I also like to say that confidence is built through commitment. So when we commit to something, when we commit to going on the journey of becoming more secure, for instance, it's really this decision of I'm choosing to believe that more is possible for me and that whatever I've experienced up until now does not have to define me and my relationship journey. And so in that commitment, I'm going to then build competency. I'm going to learn the tools and skills to equip myself to become that more secure dater and woman in love. And as we build competency, we get confidence because we're like, I know the communication skills, I know the boundary skills, I know how to be vulnerable in a healthy way. And so things that maybe used to feel like a barrier or a roadblock or something that it's like, oh, like I just never know what to do in the situation. And now I feel shame, or now I feel like an imposter or whatever. Like all of that goes away as we build the competency that again starts with kind of making that commitment and staying committed to the course. And then confidence kind of builds naturally from there.
Beautiful. I love that. So, what do you think about the current dating reality? I have a lot of clients and I've also experienced it myself. Yeah, it's quite challenging out there. And I think things have definitely changed if you compare to how it was 20 years ago compared to now. And just maybe how men are showing up differently. And maybe it's a bit hard, yeah, to get someone to commit and to pursue because there's so many options, the dating app, social media. So, yeah, what is your opinion right now with regards to dating and how can someone navigate that a little bit more efficiently?
Yeah, I love that question because while I'm all about, self-sourcing and deciding that anything is possible, I think it's also important to be realistic about the circumstances in which we are navigating collectively. And you just spoke to some of those dating challenges and the landscape has changed and it does look and feel different, but I like to remind women that the fundamentals of what creates attraction, of what supports a healthy, thriving partnership are the same. And so as you are out there dating, whether you are using an app or you're trying to meet organically, I just want to encourage everyone to really be intentional about the stories that you're telling yourself because it is easy to fall into this idea that, like, oh, there's no good guys on the apps, or, it's hard to meet someone in my city, or maybe I'm too old, maybe I've missed my chance, like all of that. So, although dating landscape does look different now and it might require a little bit more intentionality, we're not just dating to have a partner to support us financially anymore. We're not just dating because there's a cultural or religious expectation on us. For many of us, we've broken free of those kind of old barriers. And now it's like I actually get to choose a partner based on my values, based on a more expansive love vision. So while it might feel like there's kind of like a sea of not great matches you've got to wade through online, it also means you have more choice and you have more agency. And so I like to also remind women that there's a lot of positives right now. And you kind of having that healthy mindset, like we were talking about the irresistible confidence, it's going to support you in that uncircumstantial personal power to really play the long game as long as you need to stay in it and, move yourself forward. I like to also remind women that, you can date for growth, meaning in every single dating situation you come across, every time you get ghosted, every time a messaging thing falls flat on the app, or you don't get asked out again, or whatever might feel like a pitfall, there is a growth lesson to extract from that experience if you're willing to. But it requires us to not get down and kind of swept up in the status quo of how hard dating is these days in order for us to glean the insights and the nuggets that are going to propel us into the next level.
Yeah, I love that. And for the women that are maybe feeling a little bit jaded, right? They've gone on many dates, it's not working out for them, ghosting, guys not showing up the way they would like. How do we avoid that? How do we avoid, falling into that feeling of giving up maybe or losing hope?
Yeah, I like to say that your brain is wired to find evidence for whatever is most dominantly true in your belief system. And so if it does feel like, it's getting hard out there, or this keeps happening to me, or gosh, my girlfriends are echoing that this is happening to them as well, and maybe this is just how it is, and I should just focus on my career, or whatever the narrative is, of course, your brain is going to be like, okay, now it's my job to build evidence to back that up. So we get to combat that by saying, what feel more expansive and true for you. And this requires us to get underneath those self-protective patterns where we can see, maybe part of me gets discouraged because it's vulnerable to keep going. It's vulnerable to have to self-source that trust and that feeling of, okay, this does get to happen for me and it's not too late. And I get to learn from my experiences and pick myself up and keep going. Right? There's a vulnerability in that. We feel exposed. It's easier, I think, to get into this kind of self-protective, jaded place where we close off. But then I also like to remind women it's like there's a deeper desire on your heart. And that's why you're probably listening to something like this, right? And so, as challenging as it might be to admit that, having support, having a community of women who are on the same journey as you, who are going to lift you up, inspire you, give you evidence to build those healthy beliefs, that is something that can be so crucial because, yeah, navigating dating alone, it can be, easy to succumb to those self-protective patterns and old beliefs that really aren't going to get you where you want to go.
Beautiful. Thanks for that. Going back to the irresistible confidence in love, right? I think especially for people with an anxious attachment style, they lack the self-trust. So they go on dates and they're like, I'm afraid of picking the wrong partner. How can I know if he or she's the right one? And I get that question a lot from my clients. So do you have any tips there on how to cultivate more self-trust? And also maybe how to choose a partner that is good for us in our nervous system.
I love this. Yeah, these are really juicy questions. So, cultivating more self trust, I think it comes down to really starting to understand those kind of like body cues and sensations. And that goes along with nervous system expansion work that I know you're really big on as well, Cassandra. So it's like, what is my body communicating to me in this moment? And starting to discern the difference between intuition, which can feel like kind of that calm clarity, and anxiety, which can feel like this kind of this urgency, this like, like I've got to act now, or I've got to make a move now, or things feel really high stakes. Whenever there's that kind of pressure that we're feeling, either from ourselves because we don't want to mess it up and make the wrong move, or we've attracted someone that's kind of putting that pressure on, it can feel like it's hard to really tune into our own internal, intuition, discernment. And so when we're like, wait, like, let me step back and actually take a beat, let me like check in with my coach, my community. How am I feeling? Does this feel like, again, that pressure, that anxiety, or does it feel like that calm, clear yes? And sometimes in early dating, when you do have anxious attachment, those butterflies are going to be strong. It might be easy for you to want to fantasy trip and kind of get 10 steps down the road, imagining, well, what's the next date going to be like? What are we going to talk about next? How do I position myself in a way that is going to be seen as attractive? And to some extent, that's natural. Like we all kind of want to make a good impression, but it's noticing for yourself if you're like, wait, I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself. I'm, kind of feeling overly responsible for this situation to work out. And so another way to cultivate self-trust is to say, wait a minute, let me zoom out and really pay attention to how is this person showing up? And do I like how that feels? And does that align with what I'm looking for instead of being so focused on yourself and you feeling like you have to make every right move? So kind of zooming out, getting in touch with your body, those types of things can be really supportive. And then in terms of your second question, how do you attract someone who's, really going to be kind to your nervous system and like be a good fit? This is where I think that healthy vulnerability comes into play. And this is something that you can practice straight away in your first message with someone online or in a first encounter in person, where tuning into your body, you might say, hey, I'm noticing like I'm feeling really excited to be connected with you. Or, gosh, that last message you sent really made me smile. Or, I'm feeling a little bit curious about this thing that I read in your profile. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more. Or, gosh, I usually save talking about this thing that maybe I'm really looking for in a partner until a few dates in, but I'm feeling inspired to kind of bring that forward now. And I wonder how that fits for us. There's ways to kind of test the waters early on by you bringing that kind of core authentic self forward so that you can see, how does this person relate? How do they respond? Do I feel like they're deflecting? Do I feel like they're giving kind of short answers or just trying to tell me what I want to hear? But the more I can lead with authenticity and vulnerability, the better kind of gauge I can have on how this person and I fit together. And then again, I can use that body based kind of check in system. I can leverage my self trust to say, okay, like if I want a partner who's going to be really open, emotionally available, communicative, I get to practice that from the start. And to know that no matter where this goes, let's say I don't ever hear from them again, or like we realize, wow, we're actually not compatible. I get to take this as a dating for growth moment to say, well, I still was practicing the things that I want to be met with, and that really counts for something.
Yeah, those are great tips. And are there any red flags that we should look out for, especially having an anxious attachment style?
Yeah, yeah. So for those who are anxiously attached, there is that classic anxious avoidant push-pull dynamic that I'm sure many people listening have heard of or experienced. I know I've been there. And that's where we can be prone to feel attracted to someone who is a little bit more emotionally reserved or distant or in that kind of hot and cold dynamic, which can be really disorienting and confusing. And that's where we want to just pay attention to, like, okay, does it feel like this person is coming on really hot and heavy at the start and then they go quiet for several days? Or does it feel like, maybe they wrote in their profile that they're looking for something serious, but then when I ask them more directly, like, hey, what does that look like for you exactly? They're kind of dodging the question, or it doesn't feel like there's a congruence there. And that's where, again, your body is going to give you that felt sense of like, maybe I can't exactly put my finger on it, but something kind of feels off. It feels like there's a disconnect here energetically. So those types of things we want to pay attention to. Also, love bombing, can be something that we often experience as an anxiously attached person, where again, that hot and heavy is coming on. And if we don't have that self-sourced sense of worthiness and wholeness, it's going to feel really intoxicating for someone to be pedestalizing us and showering us with compliments. And we're going to feel seen and validated and like, oh, finally someone gets us and oh, it feels so good. And we just want to be mindful of that to say, wait a minute, does this person actually like have enough information about me to like be saying such a thing? Have we even met or have we even had a significant conversation yet? And just like checking the context of it. And so when you can be clear on like what's the pacing I want to have with someone, even if the butterflies are flying and the chemistry is off the charts, what kind of boundaries do I want to have in place to safeguard me so that I don't accidentally fall into something where, I've rushed into physical intimacy and now I'm kind of regretting it, or I've prematurely cut off my other options before we've actually decided to be committed. These are like common things that I see with women who have anxious attachment style. And so before you're even out there or wherever you are in the dating journey, you can just have that check-in point of like, what kind of boundaries do I want to have in place? Where have I maybe felt like I overstepped or fell into something that didn't actually work in the past? And how can I learn from that to create some parameters for myself that are going to allow me to really easily and effectively discern what type of connection is going on here?
And is there a pacing you recommend?
Yeah, women will ask, like, do you have like a structure around this? And I like to steer away from, rigid rules and frameworks and really like empowering women to trust their own timing. But I will say, generally speaking, before the first 2 to 3 months, it's probably going to be a little bit challenging to like fully know this person, to have all the information you need to feel confident moving into a fully exclusive committed relationship. So even if you're like, no, but Madeline, we've been talking on the phone for 5 hours every night and we spend all weekend together. We want to just be mindful of like, are you still staying plugged into your regular life? Are you keeping up your self care? Are you maintaining your other relationships and outlets? If you find that you're just fully immersed in this new connection, it's going to be murky to have that discernment online. So that's where I do like to say, like, keep up your regular full life. Let this potential partner earn availability on your calendar. Let them earn more time talking to you on the phone. Let them, incrementally build up how much time they're spending with you and how much you guys are talking about personal things. And to really then be in that chooser position to say, okay, do I feel like this person has earned the capacity to hear more of my, parts from my past or more intimate details about me? Have they earned the right to pick me up on a date and, see where I live? Or does it feel like we're at the place where going back to their home after a date is going to make sense? Or is that maybe going to put me in a position where it's going to feel a little bit like the lines are getting blurred? And so, again, I like to look at, what has happened in your past. That often gives us a good indicator where you might say, oh, I've always rushed, and so now I'm not going to. Or sometimes women will say, I've always been really guarded, and it's taken me a long time to warm up to someone. And so maybe my work gets to be being a little bit more expressive and unguarded in this process up front, giving a little bit more validation, providing a little bit more reassurance so that that potential romantic partner knows that I actually am interested and I'm not sending a signal that I'm kind of cold and aloof when really I am wanting to progress. And so it is dependent on the person, but I think again, looking at your past patterns are going to give you a lot of information about where you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when we have anxious attachment tendencies, we also tend to rush, right? We go in head first. And yeah, especially if there's love bombing, that feels like quite intoxicating. Or if the other person is reaching out, wanting to meet up constantly, yeah, we might be tempted to say yes, especially if we're starving for love and attention and affection. So, yeah, I think it's very important to just like have that space, right? That slow dating so that we can really see the other person objectively and also be in our own energy, and not just flooded by all the hormones, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And so, why do you think that smart, self aware women often still get stuck in the same relationship patterns?
Yeah, gosh, I see this all the time. This was me. Like, I totally get it. And I think there's nothing more maddening, right? Than being like, okay, I understand my childhood patterns. I I see my stuff. Like, I've done the work. Why am I still here? It's super frustrating. And I think that it's not because there's anything wrong with you or you're not destined to receive what you want. It's often a matter of integration. So a lot of times we've built a ton of mental, intellectual awareness. Like we've, read books or listened to podcasts or done courses or maybe we've even done therapy and it's created these aha moments, but we haven't fully integrated those learnings into an identity level capacity. Meaning, like really reshaping our belief system, how we perceive ourselves, how we relate to the world. So, we might know intellectually what to do, but we haven't taken those new actions that kind of solidify those changes. And I can certainly relate to that. I was practicing as a therapist years ago, and I was like, I have all the textbook information. Like, I can diagnose myself. I know I have anxious attachment style. Like, I see it all so clearly. And yet, my love life behind the scenes was a hot mess. And it was really that lack of integration piece that I was recognizing, where it was like, just because I know it doesn't mean I'm walking the talk. And so bridging that gap, I think, is really imperative for everyone. Also recognizing that there's a little bit of that rubber band effect. So someone listening might be familiar with the kind of concept around upper limiting, where we all have that kind of internal unconscious kind of thermostat set point, so to speak, where when things start getting good, we might then revert back to an old way of being, old thought patterns. And we just want to watch that in ourselves. So as you do attract someone that you're really excited about, is that the point at which you start to kind of second guess, and get in your head? And you were feeling really confident up until then, but maybe it's right when you meet someone, maybe it's right when you are about to become exclusive, or you're going to move in with that person and you're like, oh my gosh, I was feeling cool and grounded and all good. And now that we're progressing, like the stakes feel higher. And now I want to maybe revert back. It's recognizing that as much as you do the integration and identity work, this is a human natural tendency. And so when you can just see it for what it is and be like, "Oh, there's a part of me that's scared right now and wants to bring me back to my old baseline. This is where I can leverage some support and help myself feel safe to actually go to that next level." I have found that that can be really helpful as well.
Wonderful. I love that. And so, what would you say the number one way to start healing our anxious attachment tendencies and becoming secure is? What is a framework that you usually follow with your clients?
Yeah, so the first thing I do with anyone I work with is identify their attraction blueprint type. And so this is my methodology I walk women through. It helps them identify what is that kind of default love operating system they're working with. It does incorporate your attachment style, but then it really shines a light on what I call self-protective patterns. So we've talked about that a little bit so far, but this reframes any idea around self-sabotage. 'Cause a lot of times women are like, oh, I'm beating myself up. Like, why am I holding myself back? I'm playing small. I'm getting in my own way, all of that. And so when we look at it through the lens of you're not sabotaging yourself, you're protecting parts of yourself that maybe feel afraid of receiving the very thing you want. So let's look at it with curiosity to understand what's really driving that pattern for yourself. Let's look at it with compassion so that you're not judging and criticizing. Like, that's not helping anything. Let's like love that part of yourself up and integrate it into the whole of who you are. Starting there is really eye-opening. And so that's like the number one place I start with women. And it really kind of puts the pieces together to say, oh my gosh, I can see how in past relationships I've maybe pulled back right when it was getting good, or I jumped ahead because it felt safer to be in a fantasy than to actually be in, that initial step where there is uncertainty and you don't know what's going to happen next. And so having that fantasy about like, oh, we're going to be great together, it created a sense of certainty. Okay, let's see what was really behind that. So in the attraction blueprint process, yes, we start there looking at self-protection, and then again, getting those self-protective parts of you to kind of step aside and let what I call your core authentic self come forward and be the one really guiding you forward in your love life.
Great. So this might be a bit of a difficult question, but how much do you think is up to us doing the work, right? And really getting ready to attract and stay in that beautiful relationship versus God's timing, right? So I've been playing with that a lot, like what is up to me and in my agency and what is just up to God and destiny.
Freaking love this question. That is so beautiful. And I feel like, I mean, I even just like exhale deeply thinking about that because I can imagine someone listening to this might really find some solace in this idea that it's not all on our shoulders. Because I think for a lot of people listening, I can imagine like maybe you're super successful, you've kind of, hustled your way towards your achievements and you know how to kind of make stuff happen on your own accord. And I think at a certain point, especially in love, we can get to that kind of divine surrender where we're like, okay, I'm put up my hands because like I just don't know what to do anymore. And maybe it's not about, getting married by 30 and so I can have a kid. And maybe it's not about, these timelines that we can put on ourselves and this like extra pressure. So I do find that My personal belief is it's a co-creative process, right? We have this divinely implanted desire on our hearts for partnership, for love, and then it's up to us with our own free agency and will to say, okay, I'm going to recognize that as something that is important to me. I'm not going to stuff it down and repress it. That's an active choice that you make. From there, you're like, okay, I'm going to carve out the space and be open and available to receive those kinds of divine downloads that nudge me onto my next best direction, that give me those little breadcrumbs that maybe lead me to watching this today, right? Or that, say, hey, I think that you should go to that event that you saw happening around town next week. Or why don't you give it another go on the dating app? And there's maybe that part of you that's like, really? I don't know. And wants to bring in all the excuses and all the reasons why not. But when we listen to that deeper inner nudge, that's like, hey, I think there's something here for you. And then it's up to us to act on that, to follow through, to be open to whatever next step is waiting to be revealed. But I think whenever we find ourselves up against that wall of like, gosh, it feels like I've been doing all the right things and it's just not clicking and what's wrong, and we get into that place of frustration and discouragement, that's where we do get to remember, okay, have I been kind of white knuckling it in my love life? Have I been like pushing and forcing and on my own timeline? Okay, maybe it's not playing out in the exact time I anticipated, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. And again, there's that vulnerability and deep, deep trust where it's like, okay, I am choosing to believe that this still is for me. And that's that kind of internal commitment we were talking about earlier. So I love that question because I think it's like a both and thing, right? We have our free will and agency, but we get to use that to be informed by something greater and then resting in that faith that it is all unfolding in a timeline that's even better than we could imagine, when we allow it to, and we don't let our human kind of get in the way too much with our own ideas around how things should look.
Yeah, 100%. And this also builds confidence, right? Just having that faith. And I think it's important, right? Because there's a lot of messaging out there that puts all of the burden and the responsibility on us. Like, oh, it's our traumas, our wounds, our beliefs. If we just do enough work, then we will get A, B, or C, right? And I think it's important to just outline that, yeah, there is maybe sometimes a bigger plan that we can't see. Some might call it God's plan, some might call it destiny. But yeah, just being able to have faith and relax into that, right? And maybe have fun in the meantime. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that because I think you're right. Like so often the healing work, it feels heavy, it feels hard. It's like I'm wading through all this muck and like where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And we forget to have fun along the way and bring some levity to the healing process. So, gosh, a sense of humor will just take you so far, right? Especially when you can say, "Oh, there go my self-protective patterns again." Like, whoop, that's that like funky little thing I like to do. How funny, right? And we can just infuse some play and some self-compassion into the process. Oh my gosh. It's going to, yeah, allow healing to not feel like something you have to do to qualify yourself for the thing you want, but it's actually just going to feel like this really nourishing process where you're like, "Oh, I'm peeling back the layers and I'm actually becoming more me through the process. I'm becoming more fully self-expressed. I'm feeling, yeah, more confident, more trusting, more open." And so healing doesn't have to always be this like dark, heavy thing that we have to do as a prerequisite. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we can also get caught up in these cycles of if only I do enough work, then I will be worthy of this relationship, right? And then we're just caught again in those cycles of proving our sense of self worth. And it's like, performative of, I have to perform for love or love has to be earned. And we get caught in these cycles of incessant healing, whereas it's, yeah, also beneficial to, I think, take a step back sometimes and just realize that love is our birthright and we're worthy of love just the way we are. And doing the work will really enable us to maybe relax into the right relationship, to choose it, not push it away, not sabotage, as you said. And yeah, just trusting the timing of our lives, which can be challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love what you said there. Having fun, bringing some play into it, recognizing that the healing work is really never done, right? Like even 7 years into my relationship, I see stuff pop up all the time for me, where I bump up against what I was talking about, kind of that upper limit. I also call it your intimacy threshold, right? Where I'm like, Okay, at a certain point, I've seen it to be my experience. I'm curious, Cassandra, how you feel about this, but it's like at a certain point, it's less about, how do I get what I want? And then you kind of get into this groove where it's like, wow, I actually have brought in things that once felt really out of reach. And how beautiful and incredible is that? Now, how do I hold the good? How do I hold the feelings of abundance and trust and safety and not looking for the other shoe to drop and not feeling like it's also fragile and just going to fall away with one misstep? That is something that I'm constantly working on, where I'm like, it's good and just like let it be good.
Yeah, and that's a big one with anxious attachment, right? Because there was inconsistency, right, with regards to love. Like our caregivers were there and then they were not. Love was there, then it was taken from us. So we're I think wired to be scanning for these threats of like, when is the shoe going to drop? When is love going to be taken away from me yet again? So yeah, just closing, is there something that you recommend to the viewers and listeners that they can do to rewire that? To rewire that hypervigilance of, when is love going to be taken away from me yet again? When is the shoe going to drop? What can they do to relax, I would say, even more into love?
Yeah, I love to use the word relax. It's like such a beautiful visual. And I'll just share something that's been really supportive for me because regardless of where you are in the dating journey, like if you have partnership and you're afraid of it falling away, or you're on the track to receiving that and things just, you want things to feel good in your life no matter what. Using kind of that body-based approach like we've been talking about, like actually just taking a deep breath, signaling to your system that you are safe in this moment and that there's something good here for you to really anchor into. So I think the science says that like 3 seconds, really kind of marinating on a feeling, on a felt sense, allows it to register in our body and create those new neural pathways. So if you're like, this is a moment I just feel happy, I don't even need a reason. I just feel like things are going my way today. I just feel this spark of hope and possibility and expansion and abundance. And I just want to like simmer in this, right? Like letting yourself just really, I'm going to drink that in, right? I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to like let that feeling totally run through every cell of my body. I'm just going to like bottle it up for a couple seconds. And doing that just throughout the day, I have found is just a really beautiful moment of registering it and anchoring that in and creating that felt sense memory that you can return to. And it also just kind of shifts your focus away from what could go wrong, how fragile is all of this, to, like now that I'm focused on anchoring in the good, there's actually like a lot here throughout my day that I can do this with. And so, you might do that at the end of a date where you're like, I have no idea if I'm going to see this person again, but like, I just want to anchor in that that felt good and I'm proud of how I showed up, right? Like those little moments really add up to a lot.
Yeah, so steering away from that negativity bias where we tend to focus on the bad and instead anchoring into, yeah, the good, maybe if we feel like peace or comfort within our bodies and just solidifying in that felt sense, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Madeline. This was amazing. And are there different ways that people can work with you if they're interested? Do you offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching? Maybe you can speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I offer a couple different ways to get started with me. I do offer a kind of a 9-week introductory program, which is a great way to kind of like first understand your attraction blueprint and get some of those foundational tools under your belt that I support women with to become secure. I also have a 12-month high level mastermind. And so that's when you're ready to like really dive in and go full force for the year and have support through every moment of the dating journey. That's really powerful. We have a 3-day in person live event that we run every fall in Denver, Colorado. And then I also do one-on-one coaching as well. And so I've got a podcast called the Irresistible Woman Podcast. You can check me out on Instagram, Madeline Charles Coaching. I would love to connect with you in either of those places.
Amazing. Yeah. And if you want to access Madeline's full contact details, you can also head to healanxiousattachment.com and see her profile there. All of her contact details are included. This was lovely, Madeline. Thank you for your time and your knowledge and your presence. I'm wishing you a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. It was awesome to be here.